Okay, so today on the Live on Form podcast, we are joined by Ben Mudge. How are you, Ben?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Awesome. Yeah, you're looking very laid back and relaxed.
Ollie's literally sleeping just on a shot here beside me, so he's just giving off that like calming.
So for the people who are just listening and not watching, Ollie is...
He's my Cocker Spaniel. He's my dog.
He's a Cocker Spaniel. Very well behaved by all accounts.
He is. So far,
it's a very brave thing anyway. to sit with a dog on a podcast.
Yeah, it's rare. Usually he's clipping around the floor, but he decided to sit down beside me and give me some calming auras. It's awesome. Nice.
Well, Ollie and Ben, welcome.
Thank you.
So Ben, I'm kind of a bit stuck as to where to start with you, because I've known you for a long time. I wouldn't even hazard a guess at how long. Probably inadvertently to start with, and we met each other, and then various other bits and pieces, and we've crossed paths a million times probably over the years in various guises. But you've got a really fascinating story. I've dug into it a little bit more, and I've actually found out some things that I didn't know before, which is quite cool.
Cool.
And I think it's a great story to tell. You basically live what we talk about. You know, we talk about discipline, we talk about intent, we talk about mindset, we talk about people living on form, we talk about, looking at your potential and trying to drive that. And with that overlying factor of wellness, right? And wellness is a massive factor for you. And we'll get into this, I think, a little bit later. But should we start at the start? I'm thinking, let's go all the way back, and let's start. So Ollie the kid. So Ollie the kid. I'm obsessed with your dog. Ben the kid.
Fine.
We have known each other a long time. So Ben. So tell me about it.
So first of all, growing up, obviously, so we'll get the elephant in the room out of here. Like, I have cystic fibrosis, which is. Do you want me to explain it briefly what it is?
I think so, yeah, because I think, again, a lot of people don't kind of get a lot of, conditions that people have and people are living with and people are, coping with in many respects, right? Managing.
Yeah. They've probably heard of it, but they don't know the ins and outs of it. So to keep it very simple, cystic fibrosis is a genetic illness, so you can't catch it, unlike a lot of my primary school friends worried about. Like, if I sit near too close to Ben, am I going to get cystic fibrosis? No, it's not that simple. And it essentially affects the mucus within our bodies. So someone like yourself who doesn't have the cystic fibrosis genes, the mucus within your body is a lot like water in a glass. If you swirl it around, it moves very freely. With someone with cystic fibrosis, it's like swapping that water out with something akin to PVA glue or wallpaper paste. And obviously mucus within the body, if you know a little bit about the body, it's super important to just make everything run smoothly. And the way it affects people with cystic fibrosis the most are kind of twofold. One, the digestive system. So a lot of people with cystic fibrosis, they're called pancreatic deficient. And I actually only learned the actual full depth of this a couple of years ago. And basically the mucus in our digestive system stops the pancreas from releasing digestive enzymes into the system.
Yep.
Therefore, I need to take things like this. I'm holding up my digestive enzymes. I need to use digestive enzymes with everything I eat, simply just to get the nutrients out of the food, especially fats. The other way that affects a lot of people's CF is the mucus is a fantastic breeding ground for bacteria. So someone like yourself, you get a chest infection, the bugs sit in your chest, you clear it out after maybe a course of antibiotics, boom, done. Unfortunately, with people like myself, if we get a chest infection, those bugs sit in the mucus in our lungs and essentially destroy that lung tissue. You get another one, and another one, and another one, and eventually you're left with little to no lung tissue left at all, and that requires a lung transplant. Now, that's obviously someone who is, this is the thing, we're living in a COVID right now. When we're recording this, we're living in COVID. Hopefully this is long, is a history lesson, but essentially what everyone's going through right now with COVID is someone with cystic fibrosis his entire life. The idea of, did someone have a chest infection and cough on this product? Or for perfect example, before this all kicked off, I was up doing flag trials for Ireland for American football, and someone coughed, and I could hear it was like a mucusy cough, and I was like, he's done wind, so I'm gonna have to move where I am. So that's constantly in my head. So this is the way I've lived my entire life, which is good in a way. But yeah, it's a horrible illness, and as I said, I've lived with it my entire life. But fortunately, my parents, did a fantastic job. And I anytime I get a chance to credit my parents, I will give them full credit, because they gave me the platform that I have now to live my life. They built such a solid platform for me. They didn't treat me like I was like a leper. You know, they let me go and play with my friends. They let me run around and play in the dirt. You know, there's nothing weird about my childhood, because I don't know what it's like to not have CF.
Yeah.
So I grew up
Sounds
taking, tablets. My mum used to empty them, the digestive enzymes I take, they're like little balls inside them. My mum used to take them out, open them up and pour them into my pate filou. So I would just, fire them in me. And then eventually, I think I was maybe 3, I just started taking them myself. And I remember so vividly, actually, when I was about 5, I got brought in by the CF team to show an older kid how to take my tablets, because I was so good at it. And that was one of the first moments I was like, I'm actually kind of proud of having CF. But yeah, life was pretty normal. Again, my parents, I have to credit them so much here. My dad is, someone asked me on Instagram the other day, who's like your biggest role model when it comes to health and fitness. I was like, my dad, hands down, without a doubt. It's my dad. He did such a good job of just being a role model without, trying to force it.
Yeah.
I asked him the other day, how did we start doing push-ups and pull-ups and sit-ups at night before I used to go to bed? Back when I was maybe 7, 6. And I asked him, like, how did that get started? And he went, he just saw me and wanted to copy me. Okay. And I was like,
tell me a bit about your dad. So what's your dad's background and what does he do? And
my dad, he was ex-military.
Okay.
So he worked in the military, and then upon my birth, he realized the military life wasn't great.
Was he traveling a lot
around? Yeah, I mean, you're stationed in a new base every 2 years. So he realized that stability just wasn't going to be good for me. My mum's parents, we lived in England for a little bit. My mum's parents from here, and they realized that the healthcare here is far better. So my dad bit the bullet and was like, right, I'm going to leave my entire career for my second son. I have an older brother as well, just to make sure he's safe. So again, straight away off the bat, my dad making a huge change in his life just for me. And at that point, they were told that I probably wouldn't live until I'm 18.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is back in 1990. I mean, if you go back a couple of years, you're lucky to get to 15.
And is that managing the condition, or is that medical science, or both, or
medical discoveries? They discovered the CFTR gene. Again, as far as I'm aware, that was the kind of big breakthrough. They discovered basically genes and how they were affecting it. Digestive enzymes became far more widely used, because a lot of people with CF died simply because they couldn't eat. They literally could not eat. If you ate, you got bowel obstructions, which takes me nicely onto my next kind of segment of my life. The only thing I really experienced as a child in terms of CF, obviously having scars. I have a fairly large scar across my stomach, one on my chest, one on my neck, 2 on my arms, and obviously growing up, all you want to do is fit in, and that didn't make me fit in. So that was like a small part of it. But the big one for me was getting hospitalized twice with bowel obstructions, which, again, all I can remember is just blinding pain. That was just, I mean, it just felt like my stomach was going to explode. Again, it was just through either me not taking enough tablets or eating the wrong foods or whatever. It is fairly common. But that was the kind of most traumatizing experience growing up, having CF. And then, school, got into rugby, got into any sport I could. The only sport I was good at was sprinting, because you didn't need to be a certain size or certain frame. You just had to be fast, and I was. Rugby, not so successful because I was too small. I never got picked for any teams. I'd turn up to training every single day. I remember very vividly going out and kicking the ball up in my garden and catching it and practicing, just because I didn't want to be standing on the sidelines with my dad every Saturday. So again, going back to my dad, he supported me.
And where were you living at that point?
Pardon?
Where were you living at that point?
Just literally down the road from me in Belfast. Okay. It was just outside of Belfast.
Was rugby big thing then, where you were?
Yeah, rugby's pretty big. In Ireland, Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, rugby's a pretty big thing here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're, I mean, our school didn't even have, I was going to say soccer, football. I play American football, so I call it football. But yeah, our school didn't even have a football team until the year after I left. So rugby was the big thing.
Yeah, it was the same where I was. It was either rugby or a football school. It was very much,
Yeah, that's
when I
exactly
talk football, I mean soccer, right? Or
Yeah.
football. I don't know how we're meant to term it now, but
I don't know either. I just got, because whenever I'm talking about football, I'm talking about
American football.
American football, yeah. So yeah, again, high school, pretty normal. Obviously, I had the problems that everyone has growing up, feeling self-conscious, but however, I was very self-conscious of how small I was. I posted a photo up the other day about my kind of journey so far, and the photo I used was a photo for me in Australia. I was very fortunate to go there when I was 15, and I remember that entire holiday being too self-conscious to take a shirt off, which, as you know now, is not a problem I have.
Not a problem, right?
No, it's fine. So yeah, that was all good. Left school knowing that I didn't want to do any A levels. I still have recurring nightmares about going back to school, to be honest. I just did not enjoy the entire thing. And to be honest,
why didn't you enjoy it? Was it just challenges, or was it you just weren't very academic? Or
I think I didn't feel very academic. My brother and sister, older brother, younger sister, were both pretty academic. I think whenever they could apply themselves to things they didn't care about, whereas if I didn't care about it, I didn't care. I would
that's true with a lot of people. I mean, it's always like following what you love, right?
Exactly.
And, I was of that mentality, and school was the same. If I didn't enjoy it, I was, by default, I wasn't good at it because I didn't put the effort in, right?
Exactly. So that made me, that kind of left me with a bit of a chip on my shoulder, thinking I wasn't intelligent, I wasn't smart, because I wasn't doing as well as my brother and sister. And I was like, what's the difference between me and them? How come they can focus on these things that, well, I didn't actually realize it was because I didn't care. It was just, I just thought I wasn't smart.
And out of context, where where were they physically? So obviously you're very sporty at this point. You said at this point you're still quite small, but obviously you're looking after yourself physically, right? Because of the CF, and obviously because you want to look after yourself physically.
Yeah.
So you've got all this. So where were your sister and brother with that? Were they very active? Were they very, very sporty? Or?
Brother, he played for the first rugby. Yeah, he was always the more physically gifted one. I kind of put it like that. Sister, I think my sister didn't really do much sports, but she definitely had the ability to do sports. She still doesn't do any exercise whatsoever, and she still looks like she probably could, run at a good pace. And she never applied herself in that way. But again, I was still really small. Maybe after that, I used to work in stone. I remember in first year trying to get the 6 stone, which is
first year just into, so in modern languages, like year 7. Am I right?
Yeah, so maybe like 11 or 12.
Year 6.
11 or 12.
Yeah, maybe. Around that.
So yeah, 6 stone, like
6 stone. Wow.
Small, very, very. I still remember the scales going over that 6 stone, being like, yeah. But yeah, it was weird. But yeah, so I left school, did my GCSEs. I did actually okay at them. One of the few times I've seen my dad cry because he thought I was going to fail them miserably. And I pulled out some decent scores. Again, a lot of my higher scores were in the kind of art, design, technology, those type of things.
You sound like me, right? This is all the stuff I do.
Yeah, I relate to your story so much.
Yeah, totally. Non-academic. Anything that was non-academic, I was like, I'm at that.
Yeah, anything where I could use my hands or my imagination. Yep. Even English literature, I did better at that than language, because basically it was like creativity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, well, what do I want to do?
So you had no idea at this point, because this is the thing that whenever I talk to any guests, there's always this point where they kind of decide what avenue they're going to go down. So at this point, you have no idea what you want to do, right? Mm-hmm. And any passions or any sort of inklings as to where you're going to go with stuff?
Film, actually.
Was that just because you enjoyed films?
Yeah, I loved knowing more about them. I love the kind of, okay, how did they achieve that? Like, my favorite films at the time were like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. And I thought, like, how did they make the orcs look like that? Like, is that CGI? Is that prosthetics? Is like, what's going behind that? And I used to look at scenes and be like,
you're making me feel old here.
How many like camera shots was that? Like, how many, that's one, we see it like that, but I'm like, there's like 10 camera shots. So that means they had to set up. I was just thinking like that straight away. And it kind of ruins films a little bit to a certain degree. But I was like, that's the only thing I really was passionate about. So I went and spent the next 4 years doing media studies. And in that time, I left school. I left any form of organized sports. So I thought, right, well, I need to fill this void of lack of activity with something. And it's, I turned 16 and my friends and I were like, right, we can join the gym. So started doing that with them. Again, nothing serious, like a 16-year-old who has no idea what going to the gym is. It's just bench press, some leg extensions.
So what was that? Was that driven by your desire to look different or to grow or to get bigger? Or was
100%.
it driven by your desire to get bigger plus the management of CF?
The management of CF didn't come into it, if I'm being honest.
Didn't come into it at that point. So you're just a kid who wants to be bigger, wants to look buff, wants to,
pretty much
usual stuff,
very,
right?
Very shallow. Yeah. But again, I started to notice that my confidence was getting better. I was actually, the biggest kind of real moment was my mom and dad, Santa got us a multi-gym for the garage for Christmas. And there was a 60 kilo, the highest increment was like 60 kilos on the bench. And one of my brother's friends came in, shoved it straight up, and I was like, I'm going to give that a go. Yeah, it didn't move at all. Not even close. And then eventually I got to the point where, it's such a great, moment for me, because I was like, if I just chip away at this, I will eventually get to that, because the way that I was lifting 3 weeks ago is now getting a little bit easier for me when I was struggling with it 3 weeks ago. And I remember the moment that guy then came into the gym again, I went, here, Tom, lifted the weight, and he went, all right. He didn't care, but I was like over the moon that I just lifted the same weight as him. So yeah, it all started just with me wanting to improve my own self-image and to not be the skinny kid anymore, because when I started training, obviously being very small, I was quite lean. So when I did start putting on muscle tissue, I could see it, nearly immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was all just purely for my own self-image. And then the kind of other benefits started to kind of creep in. My lung functions had always been high. I had no real issues with my lungs during childhood. So there was no real pressure for me to try and improve it.
And they use that as a fairly solid metric, don't they, within CF and the management of it and the assessment of it, right? So lung function. So you'd get that tested. How often? It
should be every 2 months, but because of currently what's going on, I haven't been there in a while.
And how do they test that?
So it's basically through a lung function tester. It looks like a toilet roll tube. They basically put into this machine. It's a pulmonary test. So to give you a brief kind of explanation of it, 100% is someone my age, weight, and height without cystic fibrosis. So if you cloned me, that version of me would have 100% on this test. Mine has been, whenever I was growing up, it was like 115. It was, it was super, super high. So it was never really that big of a deal for me. However, having left school, when I turned 18, my lung functions dropped down to 66% from a chest infection. And bearing in mind, I lived in my parents' house, I lived in a 4-story house, so really old one. My bedroom's at the top floor. And I remember I used to run up and down that thing without even breathing. And I remember getting up to the top floor and being like, oh, this is it felt like someone just punched me and winded me. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Kept going without throughout my day. And then I started noticing little things, like I was coughing more. The mucus I was producing was like darker. And I was like, oh, this is really strange. So we went to the CF clinic. And sure enough, my lung functions had dropped by 40%.
And do you know what caused that? Or was it just
chest infection?
Just a chest infection, and then that drops. And I think to put that into context, it's like somebody removing 40% of your lung, and trying to continue to do.
The best way I can explain it, like physically, because people can't really, when I say it to someone, it's like, oh, well, they don't really know what that's like. Imagine trying to take a breath, and as soon as you're like there, it just feels like someone just pushes your diaphragm back up again. Yep. You can't, it's like, oh, whoa, that's it. And then you start coughing. But it was caused because I went to America, and I wasn't supposed to go to America with my family, so I didn't have a room. They had sorted out everyone else, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to come now. And they were like, right, well, the only thing we can do is have an airbed for you in the living room.
Right.
So this is where, and I only realized this a couple of years ago. I was like, right. So I was on a long haul flight, which again, not the most cleanly of places. So I probably picked it up there. Then usually I would get very good sleep. Sleep is one of the most consistent things in my life. I have very, very good sleep, but obviously not being able to sleep correctly, sleeping on an airbed, my sleep was shocking. So my immune system just went poof when it should have been fighting this maybe minor infection. The floodgates opened because my rest was so poor. My diet was poor as well, because it's like when you go to America, food's just thrown at you. So my diet was all out of whack. I wasn't training as much. Basically, the perfect storm for me to get sick.
And probably air conditioning, right?
And air conditioning as well.
Yeah, because aircon's something that gets me with my breathing and things like this.
Yep.
That's without air conditioning, right?
Hospitalized when I got back for 2 weeks, which was, again, a huge shock to my system. Basically, it's called a long line. It's basically an IV that goes in through the kind of bicep elbow fold. And it's a long line because it's a foot long and it goes kind of into your, damn near up near your chest.
Yep.
To deliver the IVs. And that was 3 times a day. But bearing in mind, like, up until this point, I had no real experience of being sick other than my bowel obstructions, but that was a whole different thing. And I almost didn't relate that to CF. This is scary. Like, I was 18. That's the point where you think I'm invincible.
Yeah.
There's, nothing can stop me. Also in that time, one of my best friends passed away. So that was like a real it was a hell of a time. Again, my parents weren't allowed to be with me at that point. I was 18. You still want your parents there for stuff like this, especially when it's something this big. So I've been there for about 2 weeks, and I remember the doctors coming into my room. They were doing like their rounds, and they were treating me like I wasn't even there. They were talking to me, and they had all their students around them, blah 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 blah. And I was like, "You're the first person I've seen all day. Like, what is going on? Why am I not getting better? What's happening here? Like, the IV's not working, blah, blah, blah." And he went, "I will be honest with you. We're shooting in the dark here. We don't know what to treat you for." I was like, right, okay. So you guys have had me in here for 2 weeks. That's when it like shook my entire confidence in just doctors. And I was like, right, wow, okay. Are my lung functions ever going to get better? Like, are they going to stay at 66%? Have the lungs been damaged? And they were like, well, yeah, that's a real possibility. And I was like, I just know you're wrong. Like, there's just something, when someone says something and they're not educated on the topic, and they'll say something, you're like, you don't say anything, but you're like, you're wrong, but I'll keep quiet. That was the feeling. I was just like, nah, you're wrong, because I don't feel good right now. I'm not able to exercise. I'm not able to sleep because you guys wake me up at 6 o'clock in the morning to, stab me and take my bloods, and then, turn on the machine, which gives me my IVs. I know I can get better. If you let me out of here, I will get better. And I argued my point, and eventually they were like, yeah, you know what, like, there's no point in us continuing the IVs because it's going to be too damaging for your liver anyway. So yeah, out you go. And I worked my ass off. I hate running. Unless I'm on a pitch, on a rugby field or a football field, running is just not my thing. But I remember going to the gym specifically while all my friends were doing their arms and their chest. I was like, I'm on the treadmill, like trying to get as fast as I could at running 1K. And it took me about 9 months to get my lung functions back up to 101%. But I did it.
It's mad.
And that was the most there's like these like kind of chapters in your life that are like, that's actually shaped my mind in a way that, especially at such a young age, when you kind of you still trust everything that adults say.
Yeah.
That was shaken and I kind of broken a little bit. I was like, I have to fill this in myself. I have to fill in this information. I have to work on myself. And it was just such a big moment for me. So yeah, that was the kind of significant part of my life.
So how do you look back at that? So, he said this one thing, right?
Yeah.
And, and I think sometimes with medical personnel, and these are people that, I think there's so many people out there owe an enormous amount of gratitude towards, right? Medical science is essentially, a large part of your life, but obviously the bedside manner, I guess, of that one doctor, sort of shook you quite dramatically, right?
Huge,
in just making that one statement, which maybe could have been more tactful, but I always think that sometimes they're in this, doctors particularly in this dilemma, right, is that you don't want to give someone this huge amount of positivity, but you also want to be quite blunt with them about what is actually happening, right? And I think there's such a fine line there. And this is where, soft skills, right? Soft skills are things that, you've got to have soft skills in order to be able to critically think. You've got to be able to, if you're going to be quite inquisitive about things. And, there's that Einstein quote, isn't there, about how being curious, right? And I think those soft skills that obviously you've just told us about when you were at school, that you weren't really into the hard vocational stuff, but the soft skills, which were kind of the creativity and blah, 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 you were all into. Yep. And these guys came along with distinctly lacking in these soft skills. And then it's impacted you quite significantly there, right? So how do you look back at that? How do you look at points like that in your life? Because I think this is a big thing going forward, you know, because as you get older, I always remember I have some significant things where certain people who I respected, you know, for whatever reason, and obviously, you know, you have a respect for your doctor and the person that's meant to be looking after you, and things they've said, and that you know it word for word, right? And you remember it word for word, what they said, and you realize how much it impacted you. So how do you look back at that now, and how do you go over that in your head? How do you figure it all out? How do you look at it, right?
To me, looking at it, it's
because was he the instigator for you to get off your ass? And I'm saying get off your ass, you know, obviously it was you forcing it and going, I want out of here, I want out of here. Was that the catalyst to that?
I think so.
If he turned around to you and said, Ben, you know, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. We'll be with you soon and we'll get this sorted out. If he'd said that, you might have just stayed there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Like it was, I mean, there's a reason why I remember that one, and I can see it from like a scene from a movie. Like I know exactly where I'm sitting. I know how many people in the room. I know the layout of the room. I know the sink was here, the door was there, like the bin was there. I could see
everybody's going to relate to something like that, right?
Yeah, it was just like,
you remember it, pinpoint accurate, right? You could draw it if you have drawing skills, you could draw it out exactly how it was, right?
Yeah, yeah. But to me, it was the moment where I just went, right, this is a guy. It's almost like, don't let someone, this sounds so cliched and kind of Instagrammers have kind of ruined this type of stuff, but you shouldn't let someone else dictate how your life goes. Like by just me going, yep, okay, cool. That was me giving all the way my power. Like I was just going, yep, okay, whatever. I'll just trust you completely. And it would have given away every single piece of power that I had, because I realized that, right, okay, it's going to be hard, but I know I can do this. Regardless of what he says, I know I can do this. And so it kind of was just like, it was almost empowering.
And I think sometimes with that is that people don't know the context, right? So they don't know your mindset. Yeah. They don't know your mindset. They don't know you're willing to work. And I always think that there's always this negative kind of look at somebody in that you think it's like physios, right? Physio gives somebody something to, you know, go and do. The vast majority of physios are going to go, they're probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
Realistically, they're not going to do it. So, you know, there was maybe that. I don't know. And again, I'm not rationalizing what he said to you here, but I'm trying to think of how that negative you've almost turned into quite a significant life event in that you've gone, I'm going to go and sort this out for myself. You've got out. You've got onto a treadmill, which you hate and despise, and just gone, right, I'm going to knuckle down. I'm going to get my lung function back up, because that right now is the be all and end all of everything, right? Lung function. I'm just chasing lung function. Whereas before you were chasing, I want abs, I want to lift the nuts, I want to be a bit heavier and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And that to me that's fascinating in that, you know, how that mindset has sort of been carved out, because from the picture you've painted to me is that you've actually coasted through your childhood with this condition. Yeah. That's the picture you painted. I'm sure it wasn't like that. And I'm sure you're downplaying it a bit here.
Maybe. I'd say my parents would probably be like, what? Because again, my parents did everything for me, you know, at that point, in terms of my CF. I didn't really have to deal with it. My mom was the one that was probably going to every CF clinic appointment with me and being like, oh crap, have I been feeding him enough? Is his weight good? You know, as far as I'm concerned, like, that's why I give them so much credit, because up until I was 18, it was all on them, really. The other thing that is a big thing that kind of sticks with me. So whenever I was born, I was born, I was like, there was no testing for CF back then. So it's just like, right, he's born, it's fine. Then within literally a couple of hours, my mom was trying to feed me. I was vomiting it back up. I was very bloated. I was like a weird color. And I think I would then start vomiting up bile, which is obviously not a good thing. Oh, and I also hadn't passed any meconium. I think it's meconium, which again, you know, not great. So basically, long story short, they performed surgery on me, which is why I have all the scars I have, which saved my life. And whenever my mum, again, bearing in mind, you know, I wasn't even 3 days old, and I was in an incubator, and they had wrapped my stomach up with like cling film just to keep me together.
But this is post surgery, right?
Yes.
Wow.
And my mum was standing in the, you know, wherever I was, and I think there was a nurse there, and my mum was looking at him and looking at me, and again, my mum was 20 something, and she went, "Oh, he looks like a wee cooked chicken." You know, I was brand new, I was all red and I had cling film wrapped around me. And the nurse, not knowing that my mum was my mum, was like, "Oh, it's the worst thing. That child has CF. That parents, you know, the parents of that child's lives are over. They're going to have oxygen tanks in every room. They're not going to be able to travel their lives." He is basically what she was saying was, I was just going to be a dead weight to my parents' lives.
And again, just another example of somebody just not necessarily not thinking before they speak, but speaking something maybe they don't know the full picture about, right? Yeah. And maybe in a lot of situations they were right in many respects. They were like, look, this is something which is going to be massively challenging, and maybe from their perspective they're like, I wouldn't fancy that. So therefore they're painting this picture through their own eyes and going, look, this is going to be a big challenge. And by the sound of it, there wasn't oxygen tanks in every room. You know, you looked after yourself. Your parents looked after you. You know, you were probably more than anything just probably savvy and a bit smart, you know, and thought, right, hold on, I'm not going to put myself in that situation. That's just stupid. And maybe you weren't making that decision pre-18, but your parents were, right?
Yeah.
And it's just clever, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. I mean, as I said, like, the way I've always viewed it is I could have lived my life, you know, regardless of what my parents did. And again, a lot of this is down to my parents. My life could have been very, very different. They could have made me live like the boy in the bubble. They could have not let me out to play with my friends. If any of my friends had a cough or a cold or anything like that, they'd be like, "Nah, Benjamin, you're staying in." Call me Benjamin. You know, again, I have to just credit them for planting those seeds and being like, right, let's see how it turns out. But yeah, I mean, the truth is that to a certain degree, I hate the term luck, but I was fortunate in the way that, you know, I was raised and the situations that I didn't get into with CF. You know, because there are a lot of people out there with CF, and I'm not downplaying it. And this is the thing I have to tread so carefully with, that cystic fibrosis, and I do not want to paint this picture of CF as it's fine. It's not. I mean, literally today, I got a video of a guy who he lives maybe somewhere in Spain or something. I'm attached to every tube you could possibly think of, frail as a skeleton, sitting in bed with cystic fibrosis. He's dying, and he could be the same age as me, could be younger. So I'm very aware that I do not want to paint this picture that CF is just like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's not at all. I was just very fortunate with my parents. That's something you do not get to pick. If there's something that I would say luck had effect on, it was the fact that I was born to my parents, because they had fantastic. My mom was a nurse as well. So my dad had the physical fitness down. He was the one that made me sit up very, you know, tall with my posture. He thought, right, if his airways are affected, if he slouched over like Quasimodo, you know, airways are not going to be clear. Right? So he drilled that into me from such a young age. And my friends used to always take the mick out of me, because when we were cycling on our bikes, I used to be bolt upright. They always said I looked like a dad when we were cycling. And I was like, well, right? Yeah, I was like, plus I'm only 5'8". I want to be as tall as I can possibly be.
Yeah.
And then obviously my mum being a nurse, it was the term I use, like the perfect storm for me to have a lot of fortunate events. So yeah, it was. And
I think that's knowledge as well, isn't it? It's knowledge, common sense. There's a whole myriad of things there that exist, yes. Right? Is that you know, I always empathize a lot with parents that don't. You know, I talk a lot about, you know, sort of my upbringing and blah blah blah. And ultimately, one of the things that define my upbringing, again, you know, pales into insignificance with, you know, what you've been challenged with, but I had a problem with, you know, food, right? But my parents didn't know any better. And because it was this endearing thing where, you know, if you loved your kids, you fed them, right? You know, and it was this, you know, which was just this catalyst to this slippery slope that I went down personally. So, you know, and then I think it's got to, again, that perfect storm terminology you used, where you've got these people who are into almost wellness, right? So your dad's into physical stuff, your mum's a nurse, you know, probably getting looked after herself, right? And you've got all this overlying thing that then gets carried over to you and your brother and sister, right?
Yep.
Which I think is it's a generational thing, and I think you can be so defined by that. And I would talk a lot about these generations that we're so many generations behind with respect to cooking food and looking after yourself and all these things. And obviously this is the thing we're trying to bring to the forefront. And you're a perfect example of somebody who's carrying that over into adulthood and then passing this on to other people, and not necessarily passing it on to just your own family, but passing it on to other people that you come into contact with. And obviously you come into contact with a lot of people who have your condition, because like anything in life, right, you resonate towards people who kind of understand you and get it. And I don't think for a second anybody's going to go, well, he's downplaying it. You're not going to downplay a condition, I think, that you've got and you live with and you deal with. I think what you're going to do is you're going to put it into a context where people are going to be a little bit more positive about it and think, oh, okay, so I can manage it. There are things I can do. There are things where I can look after myself and be a little bit healthier and look after my lung function and things like this and keep track on it. And I think there's so many people with any kind of conditions where there's some people like to put their head in the sand, don't they? And I'm sure there'll be people with CF out there who are getting their lung function tested once a year. Just totally oblivious to the fact that maybe it is going down or maybe it's going up or whatever it might be. And there's ways to combat that, right? So let's go back on to so you've done your studies, because again, this story continues, and obviously we're going to skip huge chunks out because there's no way we're going to be able to tell all of it. But
30 years in the making.
You've done the film studies at college. Then what happened?
So I actually started getting jobs on TV, advertising, and some small films here in Northern Ireland. One of them being Game of Thrones, which people have heard of by now. Which
was filmed in Northern Ireland, wasn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it was, yeah. The vast majority of it. Some of them were filmed in Tunisia, I think. But I didn't get, I can't remember. Anyway.
Probably when they had a bit more of a budget, right?
Yeah, the first season. So no one knew what it was. So yeah, as I said, I got some work on that. And it was upon getting work in the industry that I realized, this maybe isn't the thing for me. The hours were shockingly long. The food wasn't good or consistent. The environment.
I think anybody who's watching this in the film industry will go, the food. And they're going to be like, that's the second point he brought up there.
Yeah.
He was like, the working hours are long and the food.
Food was awful. Food was awful. But yeah, it was that. And obviously being in Northern Ireland, the elements, being out in the cold, not great for anyone, regardless of whether you've got a respiratory disease or not. And just the actual environment of the people just wasn't what I wanted to be in. So I did get, I finished up the work on that first season, but it was that kind of was like, right.
What were you doing?
I was an AD, assistant director. It sounds far more impressive than it is. My job would vary from day to day, but mainly it was looking after the cast and the cast. So there'd be days where I was sitting with 3 members of cast in a little tent, and I'd be like, right, you guys have to go on set now. And I'd take them to set, take them back to the tent, take them back to set, or I'd have to tell people to quiet, or I'd have to get the crowd cheering. Or one of the days was me sitting on the Iron Throne so that they could get the shot lined up for Joffrey. So I was Joffrey standing for quite a lot actually. And there was a couple of scenes. There was, again, reflecting on it is much more fun than being in there, because I was like, this sucks. Like, I'm cold. Like, I'm not even going to be on film. This is awful.
But it's a cool life experience, right? And it's a cool life experience. It's a cool story. Yeah. And I think everybody's got things like that in their life where they're like, at the time it really sucked, but it's a great story. It's a great story. And it's actually a really fun sort of memory, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't look at it back going, oh, I hated that. I was like, oh, it's kind of cool that I got to do that.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things to remember is, so there's a jousting scene in the first season, which if anyone's a Game of Thrones fan, they'll probably remember it. The kind of fun fact is that whenever there's a medium shot or a close-up shot of any of the actors, obviously it didn't make sense for the horses to be charging up and down this sand, pit that they made. So, Ben, you got to grab a pole, grab a ball that has roughly the height of the rider's head, and you just belt up and down that sand track for us because you're pretty quick. So anytime you're looking at the actors from a medium shot or a close-up and their eyes are following what looks to be the rider, it's me squirting up and down a track. Yeah. So there you go. There's the random one. But as I said, the whole experience again led me to my second hospitalization. And again, looking back at it, I was like, right, okay, wasn't able to train, sleep was poor, food was poor, my mindset was crap. I was outside a lot. Again, I just opened my system up to get another chest infection. I was exposed to a lot of different people as well. So that was the second time I got sick.
So a lot of this stuff now we're starting to sort of nail down and drill down in that. You know, we talk a lot about human performance. You know, you read any of this stuff on our site. We talk about sleep. We talk about, recovery. We talk about, even lung function to some degree. We talk about physical fitness, movement, all those different things. And you're starting to realize at this point, and the immune system, right, is managing the immune system, wellness, et cetera, et cetera. And at this point, you're starting to go, right, if I don't get enough sleep, it affects me massively, right? If I don't recover properly, it affects me massively, impacts my immune system, impacts all these different things. And in essence, you're kind of the prime candidate to move all that stuff kind of where you went, right? Because at this point, there was a turn in your career. And I know this part of the story is that there was a turn in your career, right? So you've been hospitalized. You've got this second big incident. How old are you at this point?
21, I think.
Right. So 3 years after your last one, right? So at this point, you had a conversation with someone on set, right?
Yeah. Yeah. With an extra who was playing a Dothraki warrior. It was a scene where Jason Momoa was taking particularly long to get his lines correct. And I was just fed up and I was like, oh my goodness, this is extending the day on. And again, all I was thinking was, what time am I going to get to sleep? Okay, I have to be here tomorrow again. And one of the extras was like, oh, what's up, man? You don't look too happy. And I was like, no, this is going to be a long day. And he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, wait, what are you doing? Like, you don't seem annoyed by the fact that this is going to take longer. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a personal trainer. I was like, what is that? What do you do for that? And he's just like, oh, I just help people in the gym. I was like, well, I enjoy the gym. He's like, oh, you look like you're in decent shape. Like, you should maybe look into it. And I was like, I will. So that's literally it. That was literally how I was like, right, I'm going to find out what this is about. And again, my parents were like, crap, you're changing career again. Like you're changing, going into the film industry. That wasn't the kind of doctor, lawyer kind of steady job that you go to university to get. Like that was already kind of a bit,
But were they happy with you doing it?
The fitness thing or the film?
Both.
The film thing, yeah, because it was bigger and kind of more exciting, and they could kind of, I think they
understand it more, right?
My son works in the film industry, whereas fitness industry, they were like, well, so you help people lift weights? Like, what is that? They didn't have a great understanding of it. Yeah, so they were supportive. They didn't ever say no, but I got the sense they're like unsure of whether this is the right path for you. But the way I rationalize it,
normal, though, isn't it?
Choice. Pardon?
I think that's normal, though, isn't it? I mean, if Mike had said, I want to be in the fitness industry, I'd be like, and there'd be even though I know the industry, even though I've been in the industry most of my life, there'd still be because I know how hard it is and I know how difficult it is. And obviously your parents wouldn't have grasped that. They'd just be like, it's a fitness industry. My dad said this, my dad turned around to me and said, where's this going to go, son?
Yep.
He was like, he couldn't get it. And again, most people wouldn't, right?
Yep. 100%. But I knew that I wasn't just going to please my parents or anyone else and stay in what I said I was going to stay in because it was going to kill me. It was going to be, I mean, that sounds super dramatic, but it would not have led me to a good place in my life. And it would have definitely, I have no doubt in my mind that I would not be in the health I am today if I'd continued along that path.
So stress, long working hours, lack of sleep, all these things that go alongside almost that glamour, right? And I'm sure that anybody you talk to, right? I've done bits and pieces in the film industry and I've worked with people who work in the film industry, actually one of the actors from Game of Thrones. Yep. And I know that there isn't really anybody who doesn't do long hours. There isn't really anybody who doesn't lack in sleep. There isn't really anybody who's living off stimulants and caffeine and, and eating badly and, you know, and I've heard
Yeah.
horrible tales of, you know, I've worked with actors and actresses who have to be in shape, but unfortunately the catering facilities are normally out. You normally have to find a different solution, but it's, so all these things that we talk about in wellness, right? And obviously you've learned to understand that all these things massively impact you.
Yeah.
Now you're going to go, I'm going to go and deliver all this.
Yep. And the funny thing is I never ever started this journey out to inspire people with CF or anything like that. Like I was just looking after myself. And I thought, you know what, if I can look after myself and I can help other people along the way, that's pretty amazing. But I had no idea, and there was never any intentions for me to be like, I'm going to use myself to be a role model for people or anything like that. I had no grand ambitions like that. I kind of just fell into this because of the way I conducted myself really. And that was kind of the start of the fitness industry, which again, without a doubt, the best decision I ever made. That conversation with that Dothraki extra was just.
You know who it was?
No, unfortunately.
So to this day, you've never looked back on the credits. Well, there wouldn't be in the credits probably as an extra, but
probably not as an extra. No, he wouldn't be named anyway.
If you're out there,
cheers.
Well done.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to fast forward us through the personal training thing, because you know, you did what you did. You've carved out a career. You've been a very good coach. I'm fully aware of that fact. You've helped a lot of people with their physical goals and things like this. But ultimately, you talked about the elephant room right at the start, and this is kind of the thing in the room that really we want to get to, which is how your condition and also your skills and your acquisition of these skills of being a coach and being a trainer, and I think your mentality, the way you conduct yourself, which again is very admirable, and how that's impacted other people. And that's kind of turned into this whole other thing, right?
Yeah.
That encompasses so much more of what really you were kind of trying to do in a minimal way. And, becoming a personal trainer, like I'm going to help a bunch of people get in shape, look after themselves, be healthy and well, and blah, blah, blah. And then along the way, you've clearly been very open about your condition.
Yep.
I was leaving it up to you to talk about it. I don't think it defines you. I don't think it is this massive, it's just part of your life, right? Yeah. And it's something that you have, made a part of your life, and obviously been very conversational about. You've talked about it a lot, which I think is incredible. You talk about it a lot, and you also express that to other people. So you've been a personal trainer for how many years until this sort of started to go, it's going in a slightly different direction?
It was fairly quick, to be honest. I think one of my first posts on my Facebook page was, I think it was the amount of tablets I need to take in a day. And a part of it was like, okay, I know the fitness industry there's a dime a dozen. Personal trainers are a dime a dozen. So I was like, right, I'm unique in a way that no one else is, and I have what I have. So I didn't play on it, but I realized I have a USP here. Like I can separate myself from a lot of people, because I'm not just doing this to look like a certain way. I'm doing this because I need to. There's no option B for me, as far as I'm aware. And I say this to my clients all the time. I bricked off option B of giving up. Like that's something I had to do very, very, very early in my career. I had to be like, right, this is my exclusive path. I don't get the luxury of having an option B, C, D, which a lot of people do. This is it. This has to work, because I want to live. It literally comes down to that. I want to live my life. Again, this comes back to my friend passing away when I was 18, he was 17. That lesson, upon reflecting on it, I thought, what can be learned from that? What can be learned from?
And was that related to cystic fibrosis?
No, he was, his bowels basically twisted. He was from Zambia. All his relatives in Zambia who got the operation to fix it, apparently it was a genetic thing. He went into the hospital here. They tried to fix it, and he unfortunately bled out internally. So that, whilst looking back at it, devastatingly sad. I mean, it's still something that still hits me today. But I think without really knowing it, that kind of taught me the importance of life. The fact that it's not promised.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make sure that not only do I live, but I have a good life. Because
and you have statistics lying over your life, right? Constantly there's
oh,
people drilling statistics about cystic fibrosis and how long
constantly.
the average life expectancy and blah, blah, blah. And again, I think that's something quite daunting that goes over the top, because people do talk about that, Larry.
Yeah. I mean, that's this, whilst fortunately I am controlling a lot of variables that it would affect me in a physical way, the one thing that I will never be able to get rid of is this. I've always described it as just like a shadow that just follows me mentally. It's just a shadow that is like, just occasionally creeps in and goes, yep, you remember you've got CF there? Or, you
And how does that affect you?
I try to not let it affect me, but it does. So whenever I see a message from someone, like that guy, the volume gets turned up a little bit. Again, I'm a very visual thinker. I always think, in literal terms, and I think the volume is something I have control over in my CF. Sometimes it's someone just grabs it and turns it all the way to 10.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, get through it, and then I have to turn it down. By looking after myself, both physically and mentally, eating the right foods, taking my nebulizers, doing all the stuff that I can control, that allows me to adjust the volume. But sometimes it gets turned up without me really wanting it to be.
And I think there's also a lack of context there, isn't there? Is that, you look at somebody who's suffering or hasn't quite managed to control it, or it's been unfortunate in they've been stuck in a circumstance that's caused some kind of infection or whatever it might be. And you don't see all that.
No.
You don't know what they've been doing, and you don't know what you're doing that's above and beyond what they're doing. And I think there's always that thing of, you are looking at the ultimate sort of wellness process, right?
Yeah.
You're going, right, I've got to nail sleep. I've got to nail my physical activity. I've got to keep my lung function high. I've got to do all of this stuff. And this is stuff that there's a lot of people out there doing, right? Who don't have cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
Who are out there chasing all these things. They've got wearable tech, and, they're tracking all these things for no other reason than they just want to be healthy, well, and inevitably live a better quality of life and probably live longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
The exact same prerogative that you've got. It's just you've got something that says, like you so eloquently put before, I bricked off option B. For me, if I decide I'm going to go on a trip that I know I'm going to struggle with sleep, I'm going to struggle with this, I'm going to put myself in an immune system compromised position on flights and, around thousands of people or whatever it might be, I can't really do that.
Yep.
But ultimately you are living this ultimate kind of wellness lifestyle in many respects, right? Which I think a lot of people are firstly going to look up to if they don't know the context of your situation. Mm-hmm. And they're going to go, well, Ben looks after himself. He's in great shape. He's, he obviously gets his sleep in. He obviously, eats well, he trains, he does all this stuff. And then they look at you and then go, wow. And then there's this overlying factor that is incredible, right? And
that's it. Like, it's the one thing, I'm sorry for interrupting there, but you just hit it here so well. The one thing I've always said is I never want people to look at me and go, he's got cystic fibrosis, look how well he's done. I want it to be, look how well he's done, he's got cystic fibrosis.
Yeah,
the structure of that sentence is everything.
Yeah. It's almost like going, look, I do this, on by the way,
Caveat,
be, by the way, hence why I didn't want to go straight down that route of, and you went, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And I was like, well, it's not the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
It isn't. Is that we could have talked about you, how you look after yourself, all of these things without knowing that overlying context that sits there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, right, let's just go down and let's talk about you. But obviously, because there's so many life incidences that have involved your particular condition, it's hard not to talk about it, right? So in talking about it, and you've obviously decided, you've gone on social media has become big and blah, blah, blah. And you've gone on social media and you started talking about very openly, very, very candidly. And it started with the thing that you said about, this is how many tablets I need to take every day.
Yeah.
And then that then draws into this bigger story. So from that now, is it, you start getting messages of people with CF, or is it, what happens?
Yeah, I started getting messages as people started commenting saying, oh, either I have cystic fibrosis, or my friend has cystic fibrosis, or my child has cystic fibrosis. And I thought, oh, that's cool. Because again, growing up, I didn't know anyone else who had it.
Yeah.
Thankfully. Whenever I went to the CF clinics, back when, you know, we could literally all, you know, as kids, they just let us all run around together, which of course they don't do now. They have to separate us all. Because that's the other thing with people probably don't know, people with cystic fibrosis can't mix because of the chance of getting a bug from one of the, you know, if someone has a bug and the other one doesn't have it, they get the bug. And then again, a lot like COVID.
I think
so yeah, I grew
a
up
lot of
without,
things to be drawn with the situation right now is that people are going, well,
so many.
everybody's going, this sucks. And you're going, well, you know, this is my life.
Welcome to my life. Yeah, welcome to
Yeah.
my life and many other people's lives. So yeah, it started off with messages. It started off within, you know, people saying, oh, you know, you've got to see, like, oh, how does he look like that? Or, you know, what are your exercise routines? And that's kind of just how it started. And then I realized that without meaning to, I was giving people something that you cannot buy. You cannot, you know, it's hard to find. It sounds so cheesy to say this, but hope. Like I was literally giving them hope that their kid who, you know, again, when you Google cystic fibrosis, the Google results are not exactly the most positive thing in the world.
No, and it's these, and this is why I was, you know, I was going to get onto it about, you know, at this point you've lived with this condition and you've said, none of my peers and the people around me, and I didn't know of anybody who had this. Now, I think nowadays there's such a temptation, you know, if somebody was diagnosed with it nowadays, first thing parents are going to do is go online.
Google.
They're going to go online, they're going to Google, then they're going to join forums, and you end up in these echo chambers of people. And my experience is very limited just through people I know that have got different conditions, right? And they drop into these echo chambers online, and all that happens is it's just this well of negativity.
Yes.
Which I'm sure, have you been on forums and stuff like that? And
I avoid them at all costs.
But you've obviously been on them in order to then decide I'm going to avoid them, right?
Yeah, I've been in groups. I've been added into Facebook groups. So this is a kind of good point to talk about some of my failures.
Yeah.
And because I again, sounds super cliche, but I don't see things as failures. I just see them as, okay, I learned from that. Let's take what I learned and move on. So I tried to do, you know, I felt like I almost owed the CF community something because I was the way I was. I had all this information. I was like, I can help people. I can do this. So I went down the path of trying to help people with CF, and I created a website. I created a membership website and everything, and it sucked because I was having to deal with cystic fibrosis, and cystic fibrosis was becoming a much, much larger part of my life than I wanted it to be. And my mental health just plummeted. People were looking at me like this Masonic figure that I was going to help them get their lung function that had been at 20% all the way up back up to 100. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't heal, you know, lung tissue.
Yeah.
I wish I could, but I can't. And I just started seeing all these negative things of it. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm out. I'm going to help people with CF, but I'm not going to make it that's all I do. If someone comes to me and they happen to have CF, yes, I'm going to help them, but I'm not going to market myself as the guy with CF because it was just too much for me. And that was hard to admit.
It's very much like, you know, the fitness industry, right? Which obviously you made yourself a part of, in that it's almost like a false advert. You're almost like a false advert for cystic fibrosis in many respects, right? Is that you go on these things and then people, they get this hope, right? And they look at you and go, I can be like Ben. But then they're losing the fact that you've done this your entire life.
Yes.
You know, you've been like this your entire life. You've picked up behaviors, habits, you've done things, you're very aware of your surroundings, you're very conscious of the things that could affect you. And all these things that you've learned over the years create this end product where you're at now. And obviously people are looking at you and going, I've got 20% lung function, but Ben made it to 100. But Ben made it to 100 from 60 and he was 18.
Yes.
You know, and had a better diet and was more active and, you know, had support mechanisms and slept well and all these other factors. And I can see how that would put enormous pressure on you as this, you know, almost like this figurehead where you're almost telling porkies to somebody, not meaning to, and without even opening your mouth, right?
Yes.
You're just going, look at me, you can do this too. And really, you're not saying that.
That's something I say this all the time. I have avoided, I don't think I've ever, as far as I'm aware, I've always avoided that phrase. If I can do this, so can you. If someone else says that about me, cool, I can't control what they say. But I will never, ever say to a client, oh, I can do this because I've got cystic fibrosis. You should be able to do this. This is ridiculous. Why can't you? I've never done that because, as you know, there are so many variables to as to why someone is the way they are. It's just stupid to even say that. Like, yes, there are some things that you control. Like, first and foremost, this is my job. This is literally my job, to be in shape, to be healthy, and to be an example for my clients. I've always believed that I should be an example to my clients. So that's a huge factor straight away. I don't have any children. I need to prioritize my health. The way that I look directly impacts my mental health as well. Because when I look at myself in the mirror, this is the thing where the vanity side has now almost evolved. I look at myself in the mirror and go, you did this. No one else did this. You spent 15 years, half of my life, I worked at it the other day, achieving this physique that everyone said you could never do. And look at it, it looks physically strong. And that just boosts my mental health so much. Like, I could never explain the relationship my physical body has to my own mental health. I would always pale in comparison to what it actually means to me. So yeah, I've always avoided being like, oh, if I can do this, so can you.
I think you're a really interesting example of somebody who's drawn by the physical kind of side of things and how that affects you mentally. And I think that's a whole other conversation. I think we could go on for hours about.
Yeah.
Because it's something where I've seen, and you've seen, right, is that physically changing someone could change them, mentally massively, right? Positively, but also negatively, right? And I've seen both sides of that, two-headed dragon. And it can be a real negative thing to people because it can change the temperament, the way they are, the way they act around people, and it can really negatively affect people. And you're an interesting one from my perspective because, you said at the start about you're not shy of taking your top off and all these different things, and I see why you do it, but I never look at it and go, and I don't cringe and I go, oh my God, Ben's took his top off again and blah blah blah, because I think it's all part of what you've framed. And I think it's all part of what you've actually, planned in many respects, whether it's been planned or not. I think it's panned out really well because, you're a superhero. I think you were quoted as in, which I think you're probably going to be really pleased about because you're big into your superheroes, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'll take it.
I don't know. Yeah, I brought this down specifically for you because this is usually in my office, but I mean, yeah, Stonebreakers. Yeah, it's sitting. It's always nearby.
That seems quite heavy, is it?
Yeah, it's about 5 kilos.
Is that a proper replica?
No, but it is solid. Like if someone comes into my house
and everybody can see everything in my background, you can't even make it to the top shelf, which I'll show you after we're done. But yeah, there's all manner of superhero memorabilia and various bits and pieces. There's actually some Game of Thrones memorabilia up there as well.
Nice.
But it's so the superhero.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming with the film stuff and the superhero stuff that came before any of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up loving superheroes, obviously watching them as whenever I was a kid, and obviously we're talking about the whole Thor thing.
Well, we're not. We're actually talking about the superhero thing, but obviously I want to know. I'm going to ask you this straight off the bat.
Okay.
Is Thor your favorite?
No.
Cool. I'm glad we got that out because I just wanted that cleared up because I was like, look, you kind of look a bit like him. You sort of. You were probably, that was always going to be the costume that you were going to go for and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, is Thor really his favorite? So who is your favorite?
Captain America.
Right. So Cap's your favorite. I know you've got a shield as well, haven't you?
Yeah, it's in the gym.
Yeah, I thought you had a shield.
And the reason why Cap's my favorite is because his story resonates with me so much. Like if you watch the first Captain America, where it's the skinny Steve, it's the guy it's the conversation he has with the doctor, where he says, a strong man who's known strength all his life takes it for granted.
Yeah.
Whereas a weak man, when they get strength, it's a thing. Oh, there's my doorbell, 2 seconds. And that resonated with me because I said the whole physical side to this, I still have this skinny, small teenager, I still have his eyes. I still have his mind. This is still me. So I look at myself and go, whoa, like you don't look like that anymore. Like you did this yourself. I didn't go in a super soldier serum, tank and come out looking like Chris Evans. I spent my entire life getting that, but it's something I will never, ever, the fact that I didn't get picked on any rugby teams, I will never not appreciate the health I have and the stuff that I've done, both physically, and in that sense. That's why Cap's my favorite by far.
And that's fully understandable. And obviously everybody's fortunate now in that most people have seen the movie. Yeah. Whereas probably when, back in the day, it was, if you didn't read the comics, you'd have no idea what the story was.
No,
this guy with a shield and American flags all over him. But
like,
I can completely relate to that. And actually, I hedged my bets on Cap. I was like, yeah it's got to be Cap. But so the Thor thing, right? So obviously you look a bit like him. You've obviously got the physique, and then that carried over into kind of you being this, this figurehead.
Yeah. So the origins of that, use that word in this context, it's not what people think. It was never me going, I look a bit like Chris Hemsworth, I'm going to dress up like Thor. It literally came down to me being inquisitive, much like your Einstein quote the other day. My brain has always been like a 4-year-old's of why. I always want to know why things are the way they are. And it came down to me sitting in my office. I remember it so vividly. And I wrote Thursday and I went, why do we use that word? Why is it specifically that word that we use for this day in the week? So of course I Googled it. And basically I found out that all the words of the week that we use all basically come from different, pieces of language. Thursday meaning Thor's Day. And Wednesday is Woden's Day, which is Odin's Day. So a lot of our language is borrowed from Norse or Viking.
Odin was the god of war?
He was the god of gods. He was kind of Zeus, the Zeus version. He was Thor's dad. And then Tyr was Tuesday, Tyr's Day, which was Tuesday. He was the god of combat.
Yes. We're doing a podcast and giving a history lesson.
Yeah, so this is my head. Welcome to my head. So I thought that's kind of cool. That's a cool fact. My head's full of random stuff like that, but I thought that's kind of cool. It's Thursday today. I have a little Thor's hammer that I got from a festival whenever I went over to visit my father-in-law. It was a foam Mjolnir, the hammer that Thor has. I was like, nice day, take a shirt off, boom, take a photo with it. Hashtag Thor's Day. Did you know that Thursday comes from the word Thursday? Right. That was it. And then I was like, oh, this is kind of a cool thing to post about. Every Thursday I can do a post and I can maybe a workout or anything like that. And then it was at that point I was growing my hair out because I hated having short hair. That was literally it. I didn't grow it out to try and look like him or anything like that. I hated having short hair. Never knew how to style it. I was like, screw it. If it's long, tie it back, done. And Ollie's finally moving. And that's pretty much how it started. And then obviously people start saying, oh, you look like Thor. And oh, my kid saw you in that photo who has cystic fibrosis. Now he thinks Thor has cystic fibrosis. And I thought, hold on. This is an opportunity for me to create a superhero out of, that has cystic fibrosis, that is going to give these kids a reason to take their nebulizers, to take their digestive enzymes, just to make them feel not the way I felt when I was younger, where I would look at all these people and be like, I bet I'm different to them. I'm not quite the same as them. And that was an opportunity that I thought, well, first of all, I get to dress up as Thor, so that was kind of cool. And secondly, this is going to help so many parents with their kids. And that, again, that came from not me thinking it came from parents inspire me going, I showed my kid this picture of you and now they're running around and they want a Thor's hammer and they're saying like, oh, Thor has CF just like me. And I thought, this is the freaking best. So I've created something that I desperately wanted when I was a kid in this generation. Yeah. And I cannot honestly feel there's no way I could ever describe the feeling that I got whenever I got messages from people who said anything about that, or I'd get videos of kids with their Thor's hammer from all over the world. There'd be videos of them taking their nebulizers and their Thor's hammer sitting beside them.
Yep. No, I've seen quite a few of them.
Mate, it blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind.
Amazing.
Something I'm yeah, again, it was all a happy, inquisitive accident.
And you get to do all that without having to do, obviously, when you did the membership site and blah, 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 without being this whole, I'm pretending to, well, not pretending even, you're just alluding to being something that you're not almost, right?
Yeah.
Where you're going, look, I want to give hope, but I don't want to give false hope.
Yes.
And I also don't want to be negative about it, but I also don't want to be overly positive about it. And that's that, what we were talking about before with like, medical stuff. It's this real fine line between, look, you can be positive, but you also got to be a little bit of a realist, and you've got to sit somewhere in between. And it's
like realistically positive,
right?
Yeah, like realistically positive. That's the kind of word I'd plug in there. Yeah, because you have to realize that you have to know your own circumstances, but also it's the way you look at things. It's the angle you look at things, because you could look at one thing and it's exactly the same thing, but the perspective you have on it can be totally different. And I think that's something that, again, the analogy I would use here is like, you don't get to decide what you get to look at, but you do get to decide what angle you look at it from. And that's something that I try to I try to not push that upon my clients, but I try to get them to think of that as like, yeah, okay, COVID right now sucks. There's nothing we can do about it. However, let's frame it and let's get you looking at it a way that is going to be positive for your life.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah, eternal positivity, which annoys the hell out of most people. I think I talked about this on a podcast that I was a guest on not so many days ago, and I said, look, people despise it in me in many respects, in that, I'm eternally positive. COVID, I can't do anything about it. I goes, I can only do my part, right? I can only do my part. I can only follow rules. I can only do whatever it might be. But ultimately, the situation we're in is the situation we're in. We can't change that. So you've got to draw positives from it and almost leverage it and figure out what you can do rather than what you can't do. And I think there's always that focus, and especially with conditions, right? And we've talked to a couple of people with various conditions on the podcast, and same thing is that they look at things as going, it's not about this list of things that I can't do. It's about this list of things that I can do. Exactly. And again, it sounds so cliche and so cheesy and tacky. And like you said before, social media and Instagrammers have kind of killed it summary, but I don't think they have. I think that, when somebody sees something that's genuine, I think people can draw that from it. When they see something that's kind of disingenuine, it's just it's a cheesy phrase or whatever it might be. I think it's different. Yeah. And I think that anything that you say has that weight behind it of, all right, that is actually genuine. I think you can get away with however many cheesy memes or phrases you want, because there is context behind it, right?
Yeah, there's that weight that a lot of the people we see posting them have. There's no weight behind it. It's literally just something so they can write a caption.
Yeah, it's a bit throwaway, isn't it?
Yeah,
a bit throwaway. Right, so I'm gonna go. I'm kind of stuck as to which angle to go down here, and I'm thinking I'm gonna go where I'd normally go at the end of a podcast. Is that so? Your social media is probably where you're sharing a lot of these stories, because people right now are thinking, I'd love to see some of these stories of these kids and all these different things. Now, there's a lot of this on your social media, right?
Yes.
So on what are your social media handles? Where are people going to find you?
At Ben Mudge _. Someone's still got Ben Mudge. He hasn't used his account in a while, but I cannot get just Ben Mudge by itself. But yeah, Ben Mudge _. And then my coaching program is theathleticmuscleblueprint.com. So that's where you can see the people I've worked with. That's basically my coaching package.
And that's open to everybody. That isn't just something that you do, for the cystic fibrosis community. That's everybody, right?
Everybody.
That's you as a coach. That's you taking your mentality. That's you taking how you frame things, all that stuff, and bringing it into a coaching package, which has the physical and the wellness kind of side of everything in amongst it.
And that the cool thing is that this new structure to my coaching, again, I say that I had all those failures as they were. I air quoted there. I do that a lot in the podcast, but they all led me to this right now, which is, I could not be happier with where I'm at in terms of my professional career right now, because it allowed me to get to this point. And the AMB, which is what the program is short for, has been just incredible for me as a coach. It made me enjoy coaching again. I've done it for 10 years, and I have to admit, and I'm sure you've felt the same way, that it waxes and wanes. Your passion for it kind of goes, there's peaks and there's sometimes huge troughs. But right now, this structure, this layout, this way I'm working with people is not only working for me, it's working for them. And it is it is phenomenal. So if anyone's, you know, I don't know if this is I can push this or not, but
hey, just
if
talk
anyone
about
is
the things
looking,
you're doing. You know, it's all
yeah,
relevant.
like, so the AMB is essentially if you want to work with someone who understands what you're going through, wants to actually understand your whys and you know, get invested in you as a person, it's the program. You know, it's not this 8-week, 12-week get shredded. You know, it's not that. It's the complete opposite of that. What I want to do on this program is educate people, because to me, a lot of people, you know, you talk about patience, it's a big component to getting where you want to be, and I say that a lot, but I realized that I was actually incorrect in that I was using the word patience in the wrong context, and it's actually not that. It's the understanding. I understand the process of where I need to be. It's a perfect analogy I heard the other day was, if you get in a 2-hour flight and it takes 4 hours, you have to have patience, because you don't know why something that should have taken this long takes this long. However, if you get on a 14-hour flight, it takes 14 hours, no patience whatsoever, because you understand the duration of that flight. You understand it. So to me, the whole purpose of my coaching is to educate people on the things they need to care about, and disregarding all the stuff they don't need to be worrying about, like the new fad diets, or, oh, is this exercise better than this one? It's stripping away all that nonsense.
And that goes back to kind of what you were saying before about the forum stuff and the membership site that you tried to develop, and obviously with the intent of helping people.
Yeah.
It's that false hope that carries over again into our industry. And if we were to take that, as you put it, the elephant in the room, away from, you know, the context of you as a coach, all of a sudden then, you know, you become that elephant in the room. You can become that, you know, you become that false hope. You become that person that says, look, I look like this. So if you follow what I do, you're going to look like this. Whereas, you know, and I think this is this evolved aspect of coaching, and a lot of coaches, and probably the coaches that we speak to on the podcast, the vast majority of them are going to kind of get it and understand that, look, there's more to this. There's more to wellness. There's more to, you know, being exceptional. There's more to, you know, nutrition. There's more to understanding what somebody wants at the end of it. And it isn't all physical. You know, there's mental aspects to it as well. You know, mental and physical wellness are a massive thing now, and something we solidly talk about, because they do carry over. And as you've pinpointed before, is that, you know, your mental wellness is largely to do with your physical wellness, and
100%.
whatever defines that for somebody, it could be different, right? And I think that's where it pans out, really. But yeah, and I think that's a level of your maturity, right, as a coach and as an individual. And I think you're probably a tad more grown up than your age would probably reflect. Simply because of, I think, life experience, right? You know,
yeah.
I think that plays a big role. I think life experience plays a big role. So what's in the future for Ben? So have you got plans for the future? Have you got, you know, things that you're going to be doing, things that you're going to be moving towards, working towards? Obviously, we're in a bit of a pickle right now with respect to getting much further than our front door. But what's the plans for the future? Are there any, or is it kind of, I'm just going with the flow right now?
I'm really enjoying where I'm at right now, which I think is a freaking amazing place to be. That I, you know, every time you speak to someone, they're like, I can't wait until this. I can't wait until this. And I'm like, I'm pretty happy with what's going on right now. Yeah. I've worked, as far as I'm aware, a third of my life. My professional career in this industry has been a third of my life. I've worked to try to get to this point, and I am enjoying the hell out of it. But with that being said, the thing that I would love to continue doing is writing my book, which is essentially trying to take everything that I, you know, talk about in these podcasts, and any time I do any interviews or anything like that, and, you know, give it to people in a readable manner, so they can be like, right, I'm not going to ignore all that crap I see on social media. I'm going to ignore the fact that people say that, you know, you can take an injection, it'll burn away fat and all that nonsense, and it's going to give them a book that is like, right, this is back to basics.
So what's the book based around? Is it have you got pen to paper yet, or is it just
I've started it. It is hard to write books. It is hard.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. It's basically, the name of it, I'm not 100% sure. It's sitting on my desktop right here. I've literally just the back to basics book. But
so it's about health and fitness and blah blah blah. So it's none of your story in there.
There's the start, that, which is what I've written at the start already. Now it's kind of a brief explanation of my background, so that they have context into.
I'm not telling you how to write your book, but I think that would be a gross error to leave anything like that out. I think
Yeah, I figured that.
I think there's so much in there. I think that's, you know, it adds weight. Like you said before, it adds weight.
Yeah.
It adds weight to, you know, and irrespective of whether, you know, you're dealing with people who've got cystic fibrosis or not, I think it adds weight to, you know, your skills as a practitioner, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. But yeah, it's essentially, the idea of it came to me when I was out walking Ollie. And I thought, why is it that I am where I'm at right now in terms of my health? What is it that I am doing so consistently that has led to this result? Because as you know, it's not what you do in one day, it's what you do across a multitude of days. Like I've said, like one grain of sand does not make a beach.
Yeah.
You know, you had a lot, there's a beach. And I was thinking, what is that grain of sand? What is it that I'm constantly adding every single day? And I was like, right, well, realistically, I sleep well. I exercise and move. And that's a point I make in the book that, you know, I want to make in the book, that it's not just weight training. It's American football. It's, you know, running around with my nephews. It's just being active. And so it's activity. I've labeled that. It's nutrition, obviously, which we both know is a huge component to this. And then it's mindset. So those are the kind of 4 pillars that I, you know, again, visually, I'm thinking like the, you know, like the Parthenon or the Roman structures of these 4 pillars, and they need to be of equal value to hold up what I would consider is, you know, my health.
So how does it, so let's take some of those just, and again, we'll make this kind of, you know, this sort of closing topic as such, because I think people would like to know a little bit more about, you know, what do you do on a daily basis with respect to, you know, we can almost talk about, you know, the subject of biohacking, which is a big term right now. And again, it's a bit, unfortunately, it hasn't been clarified what that actually is, but ultimately we're looking at what are the things that you do in your day that probably are on the spectrum of being a little bit crazy is not the word, but a little bit innovative with respect to what you do. So do you use wearable tech? Are there any strategies that you're using to help you sleep? Are you using lighting? Are you using, you know, exposure to anything, supplements? Is there anything there that you're particularly using in your day to help you with all of those things that you just categorize there? You know, the wellness kind of spectrum.
So let's talk about sleep, because again, I think I will talk about this as much as I can, because I think there's almost like people have like a toxic relationship with sleep, in the sense that not sleeping as much is almost something to boast about. Perfect example, The Rock. Now, I'm a huge fan of The Rock, and I'm pretty sure you are too. But his mentality of, I sleep, like, it seems like he never sleeps.
You know something? This was actually, I was listening to it was almost like a vocal like monologue about, you know, stuff he said.
Yeah.
The other day, actually, when I was training, and that was the exact thought in my mind. I was like, look, he's telling us about, he gets up at such and such time and goes to bed at such and such time, works these days, and blah blah blah. And obviously, you understand the trials and tribulations of the film industry, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got travel and all that stuff in there as well. And it was the thing that was going over my head. But you know something, he never talks about it.
No, never. And
He
I
never
thought,
says, you know, I only sleep X amount. He never actually pinpoints what it is.
no. And that's, you know, people will start almost going, okay, it's clear that he barely sleeps. So therefore, in order for me to be successful, I need to not sleep. And that's the worst thing you could possibly do.
But never looks
It's
tired.
something that I felt so guilty of for my entire life, because I slept so much. And it took me a long time. And my mom, as I said, my dad's military, so crack it on. Mum nurse, crack it on. Me, let me sleep. And I felt so guilty all my life. But then I realized, well, this is a huge part of my life that I you know, whilst I'm sacrificing some awake hours, this is helping me stay healthy. And then I also realized I've got cystic fibrosis. Whilst yes, it doesn't affect me on a day-to-day basis as much as other people, regardless, my body is working very hard under the surface just to keep me going.
Yeah.
You know, every internal process within my body is still very difficult. So the amount of hours that I need to sleep is going to be different to someone else's. But for me, what really helps me is whenever I go to bed, and I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this, is that's when your brain just starts firing off. Because there's silence, there's no visual distractions, there's no, you know, tactile distractions, there's nothing. It's just you in your mind, and it's just like, you think of the weirdest stuff in the world. You think of the most depressing things. You think of the most just your brain goes on all these amazing tangents. So what's helped me, and it sounds ridiculous, is I listen to a topic that I find mildly interesting. So I'll have a podcast on, which most of the time is a movie podcast.
Yeah.
And that allows me to, my brain isn't, focused on internal, it's external. So it's focused on something else, but it's not enough to kind of perk my interest. It's just like, okay, it's like listen to someone having a conversation that you're not super into, but you're like, I can just chill.
Yeah. Yeah.
That has been by and far the easiest method for me to get to sleep, to the point where my wife can't fall asleep without there being, someone talking in the room. And it sounds ridiculous, but that is.
It actually doesn't sound ridiculous. I totally get that. It's, you don't want something to be stimulating.
Exactly.
But you also don't want to be left to your own devices, especially I think if and you pinpointed earlier in the podcast about the fact that you're a very creative thinker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it's something that you're kind of cursed with. I think if you're a creative person, in the second that you get a bit of space, your brain goes nuts.
And then again with the CF, the shadow that my mind can go to some pretty dark places, and then that can spiral off, and I start panicking. I've never had a panic attack, and I've never had anything like that, bar one maybe event, which was triggered by CF. But I'm very fortunate in that sense, and I think that has been that's the one thing I think is fairly unique or outside of the box that maybe people don't do, that I definitely do.
I think you'd be surprised that there'll be a lot of people who do some kind of guise of that, whether it's a TV show or whatever it might be. We quite often throw the TV on at night, and despite the fact that I know about light and I know about I have no problem falling asleep.
No, me either.
I don't have any issues with lights stimulating me overly and blah blah blah. But I have a very stringent sort of routine with what I do in the morning, what I do in the evening. So I think it's something that people will relate to. But again, I've heard my wife say before, she's like, don't put that show on because I'll get into it and then I won't be able to sleep.
Yeah.
But we can put this on because it's kind of like, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
You don't care. And it's a similar kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Similar kind of thing. So is there anything like really novel that in the morning, do you have a morning routine? Is there anything funky in there that you do that probably, is thinking outside the box or thinking a little bit revolutionary? What about bedtime routine? Is there anything else in there?
Not really. Oh no. Like that's the thing. Like I always say this, that if you looked at me and just from a surface level, you'd think he's not really doing anything different. Like there's nothing that different. Like if you saw me in the gym, this is where all the praise and all that stuff that I get, it makes me feel a bit awkward because I'm like, I don't really deserve all this. I'm just doing what normal people do. And that kind of carries on to the rest of us. The only thing I would say, and this is my present or my clients will very much resonate with this. One thing when it comes to nutrition, every single time I eat, there's a voice in my head that goes, where's the protein? Where's the protein in that meal? And that is genuinely probably the simplest piece of advice I can give anyone if they're struggling with nutrition, is look at every time you eat and go, is there a source of protein in that meal? Yeah. It's probably going to be pretty helpful, but that is stuck in my mind. Even when I'm on holiday and I'm like at a buffet, we were in Lanzarote a couple of months ago. I went to the buffet and I was like, right, okay. Whilst I don't super enjoy eggs, I'll eat them because I know that's going to get my protein and then I can enjoy the rest of my food. It's a very, very simple thing that I do every single day. And again, my clients will laugh at me because I literally said one thing you can get from me. It's just like, where's the protein? Where's the protein? But yeah, other than that, I'm pretty straightforward. Again, I kind of like that because if someone had the ability to watch me, they wouldn't see anything extraordinary. And I'm glad because that means that they can see that you don't need to be extraordinary to get to a high level of whatever it is you want to be.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of framework that carries over from something you've done for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Sleep patterns, you've never disrupted sleep patterns, which a lot of people do, right? Because for you, it's detrimental, right? I think there's so many people out there trying to fix bad patterns and bad behaviors and bad this, that, whereas, yours have had to have been good for so long, right? Is that these are habitual things you do.
Yeah.
That result in where you're at. But those habitual things are thoroughly interesting. I think, like you said, they aren't out of the norm.
No.
They're very straightforward. They're very basic, but like you said, there is no option B for you in many respects. And, you know, I totally admire that, because I think that's you know, I'd almost like to not have an option B at times, you know, because it really forces you down a route that really you want to go, right? Yeah. And I think that short-term mentality of short-term satisfaction that you derive from so many things that you make that bad call with. You're like, oh, I want that right now. Or, you know, we're not just talking about nutrition, we're talking about, you know, everything in life. But it's a fascinating insight, Ben. Thoroughly appreciate you giving us your time and spending time with us here. Ollie has been the best behaved dog ever. He's still there, right?
Yeah, I mean,
people listening.
I kind of want to prove to you that he's actually here, but he's so dark he can't even see. He's literally been sitting here.
He's had his dog next to him the whole podcast and hasn't piped up, hasn't said a word.
Nope, not a single one.
Or perhaps I'm the dog whisperer. Who knows?
I have to listen to this podcast over and over again. Then, if
hey Ben, yeah, you'll be telling me next to use me to fall asleep to.
That might be weird.
Let's not go down that.
I'll keep that to myself.
Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Best luck with all your things going forward. Hope you get that book finished. And if you do, you must come on and tell us about it. That would be totally, you know, incredible. And I'd love to see you get it over the line, because I know how books can be. They can be very challenging, and the writer's block thing is true. It does happen.
100%.
Especially when you've got loads of ideas, I think.
Yeah, you like, I know this.
Write about this. You're like, what was I writing about yesterday? I'm going to write about this today. And then you've got to kind of patch it all together, right?
Yeah, you have to make it flow.
Yeah. Challenging. Yeah. Thank you once again for joining us. And Ben, take care. We'll speak soon.
Thank you very much.